Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to the channel, Reading Ideas. Now, I don't know how common or rare this book is, so it's difficult to make a recommendation on it if you can't get it, but I will do. So it's been about a year where I've been reading Louis L'Amour books. There's plenty of them. I've read quite a few now. They're a lovely read, interesting, exciting. Very, very enjoyable. A great storyteller, and it's great to be out on those western plains. And now I was looking in the cowboy section in local second-hand bookshop, and there was no Louis L'Amour there that I was missing. But I came across this book. It's quite old. It's an ex-library book, Day by Day Service, Class B, 3D per week, or parts thereof. In pencil, the bookseller has put scarce £5, and it's called A Vaquero or Vaquero of the Brush Country by J. Frank Dobie, D-O-B-I-E. He's written other books, 1, 2, 3, quite a few there. So might be worth looking out. And it's J. Frank Dobie, a Vaquero of the Brush Country, partly from the reminiscences of John Young. And there's a photo there. One of the Mossy Horns, Old Champion, owned by J.M. Dobie. Live Oak County, Texas, 1899. So I enjoyed reading this. It's a bit more. Basically, it's Mr. Dobie trying to put the record straight on. The Wild West from his point of view, because he lived it. At the early start, as is quite often with books of people that were there, they want to kind of make corrections. The first one is that nobody referred to themselves as cowboys. That came in later, and that it was more the Mexican Spanish name, Vaquero. So a Vaquero, Vaquero, V-A-Q-U-E-R-O. It was more the name. So whether people went for the English version later on rather than the Spanish. So that's the first correction. And he talks about his time. Quite an interesting book. It's a bit more, I wouldn't say textbooky, isn't quite the same, but Louis L'Amour, it's what Louis L'Amour's doing is he's taking the place, the Wild West, he's taking some of the what happened there, the background, and he's a bit James Bonding it, isn't he? He's kind of picking somebody. They're not ordinary people, they're quick on the draw, strong character. They're put in, very dramatic situations. So he's making a story of it. Now, I've not read a lot of other cowboy writers, Edson and all those, so I don't know how they write it. So he's telling his tale, and he's trying to, put the record straight. So the other thing is that it's he goes through some numbers, and he says that it just wasn't just cows that were moved around, it was horses, and at one point it was even turkeys. So he said, nobody's really talking about the horses being moved about. Nobody mentioned the turkeys that were moved. Nobody's kind of really talking about the sheep that were there. So I think I wouldn't say upset, but it's kind of like, that bit's missing. he talks about true things that happened, the weather, and the he came across the Indians a little bit and had like near misses. So it's a bit like so if you've ever been in a scrap, it's usually over in seconds. It's nothing like you've ever thought it was going to be, and you'd be thinking about afterwards about what could have happened, and well, you have like a mark on your cheek and you kind of didn't know how it got there. Not that this happens often. So it's not like fights in books. So he's he's a bit like that. So it's not like long standoffs. But what he does really well is he tells the story of Texas and the West, about why, because when like reading Louis L'Amour, you're kind of placed in a situation and they're rounding up loose cattle, or brands get mixed up, and you're kind of thinking, well, how on earth did that happen? And he tells the story of it. So when you're reading like a Louis L'Amour book, you just get the adventure. You don't get right, well, at this stage it was an open range, and then at this stage barbed wire was invented, and then that was put across, and at this stage there was the Civil War. So you get it's kind of mentioned as part of the story, but you're not giving it in chronological order. You're not giving it its importance. You're kind of thrown in a story. So he does a really good job of that. Going through the history of it, the structure of it, the time periods. Why there was cattle roaming around, for people to to round up in these different places. He goes through why why the border with Mexico was quite fluid. He goes through why it was lawless and why people could round up all this loose cattle and steal cattle. So he has a very good picture of that. There's even a little appearance of he met Billy the Kid, one of the famous outlaw cowboys. Well, he says he wasn't really a cowboy. So he goes through meeting him. He doesn't overplay it, which is really good. He just says, what he knew of him, how he saw him, and so that's good that he's not kind of romanticized it, and he's not overblown. What happened. So it's a very good read to see the history of the Wild West, his place in it, and just the ordinary everyday aspects of it. So if you can get your hands on it, definitely worth a read if you're into Louis L'Amour or cowboy books, or if you want to know that bit of history. So they're not cowboys, they're vaqueros, or vaqueros, or however you pronounce it. A vaquero of the brush country. J. Frank Dobie. Happy reading, everybody.